Hello again, everyone, and thank you so much for joining us for this Saturday's edition of Alaska Weather. I'm Dave Percy, meteorologist with the National Weather Service, and I'll be hosting today's show. No watches, warnings, or advisories for weather or any of the rivers or streams around the state for tonight or tomorrow. So we'll just go right to the fire danger, and still an area that barely reaches the extreme category up here in the Yukon Flats with some high fire danger northeast and southwest of that zone, and then some spotty hit and miss areas here cutting right through the central interior from just the north side there of the Alaska Range, small area there, a little bit bigger around Fairbanks, Tanana, and then on out there to the eastern Seward Peninsula or so. This area in the Susitna Valley, that just barely reaches the high fire danger criteria, and then a couple of small areas here in the Copper River Basin, especially here along the valley there off to the southeast. And from there, going to satellite imagery, see a band of clouds here slowly lifting northeastward there from the North Wrangell Island system there, extending down to the western Arctic coast today and then on down in toward Arctic Village with some little bit of cloudiness getting in the northern upper Yukon Valley. Really a dry band of moisture with not much in the way of any precipitation, although there was some measurable rain today here, some areas of the western Brooks Range, some of the higher elevations. Then we had some clouds here over the Seward Peninsula that brought a little bit of moisture, 1 or 2 hundredths of an inch to places like Nome. On out to Tin City, reporting some light rain with a fog. And southerly winds, St. Lawrence Island, windiest place today in the state, was actually at Cape Lisburne. They had gusts earlier today up to 45 miles an hour out of the southwest. Otherwise, contrasting that with 15 to 20 at Point Hope. So really pretty isolated there to Cape Lisburne. And 25, 30 mile an hour winds through the Bering Strait, Tin City, Wales, and gusts of 30, 35 miles an hour, closer to 30 miles an hour there for St. Lawrence Island. And out in the Bering Sea, band of moisture right here, stationary, but the one coming in from the west catches up to it, merges there. That kept it cloudy and wet here across the Pribilofs all day long with fog. Rainfall amounts were light. St. Paul today picked up 0.14 of an inch of precipitation. Main low center back to the west there. And band of moisture and clouds extending to just north of the Aleutians. And then this old boundary through here, still weakening front with low pressure down to the south. That brought up to half an inch of rain today to Chignik with much lighter amounts elsewhere. A few hundredths of an inch here with the clouds farther into the southwest interior areas. Sunny and warm over much interior Alaska. Temperatures across central interior with 40-mile country up around or reaching the lower 80s this afternoon. Big Lake, Big Lake, yes, in the southern Susitna Valley reached 80 degrees and temperatures well into the 70s across the Kenai Peninsula. Lower 80s, Chitna had 83 degrees this afternoon at 3 p.m., while Benchumina and Farewell at 81. And also over the southeast coast, sunshine with temperatures approaching 80 degrees over the southern panhandle. Shelter Cove, I believe, had 82 degrees at 3 p.m. Otherwise, just some scattered showers noted here, widely isolated light showers in the west here with the clouds, sunny and warm to, in some cases, hot over the eastern interior. Dry band of moisture with a very weak trough up to the northwest. And then this weak front kept rain going, as I mentioned, about half an inch there. So a narrow band of rather moderate rain in upslope areas of the Alaska Range with lighter amounts trying to push in toward Kodiak and then back to the west there with just kind of cloudy, damp conditions, but light winds over the Aleutians. Forecast for tonight, that weak front will continue to try and progress northeastward. So that brings a chance of rain mostly to southern southwest Kodiak Island after midnight, especially on toward morning. And it'll definitely be wetter along the Aleutian Range and parts of Bristol Bay. Really won't reach King Sam and Igigik or Dillingham, as well as Togiak, just a risk of some showers there over the southwest mountains. Low clouds, fog, and drizzle quite prevalent. Getting a lot of IFR out here over the Bering Sea, as well as the Aleutians, with several enhancements in the moisture there. Got a surge here with this low coming eastward. so it'll be a little steadier, possibly a tad heavier. Stay wet and damp and foggy over the Pribilof Islands, as well as the Bering Strait areas on up to the western Arctic coast. And then for tomorrow, isolated thunderstorms possible here up over the northwest part of the state, specifically the Brooks Range on eastward there. Possibly risk of a thunderstorm eastern north slope, but trough back to the west here. Increasing southwest flow, that'll bring weak surges of moisture northeastward here from the Chukchi Sea, and they'll slide up along mainly the western Arctic coast. Better conditions like today over the eastern areas. Low clouds, fog, chance of rain, light drizzle here, Kuskokwim Bay, really from the Yukon Delta coast right into Bristol Bay. That front really washing out now, but still a chance of rain, Kodiak Islands. So cloudy, occasionally damp tomorrow. Definitely lower flying conditions. Some of that moisture trying to work into the southern Kenai Peninsula, Seldovia, maybe even Homer, a chance of some sprinkles late in the afternoon. Much better chance over toward Iliamna, Kamishak Bay. Not trying to work up the southern Alaska range, but sunny skies, warm temperatures. Again, South Central Alaska, Copper River Basin, way into the 80s. In fact, near record high temperatures expected for the eastern interior, southeast interior, 40-mile country. Mid to upper 80s possible in those areas. Northway, Delta, Big Delta could reach record highs. Record high for Northway is 83 tomorrow, and Delta, 84. Both of those could be broke tomorrow afternoon. Otherwise, about the same type of weather there for the southeast coast with low clouds, fog, especially in the morning hours right along the outer coastline. And moving ahead to Monday, weak low, really a thermal low here with the temperatures again rising in the mid to upper 80s here over the southeast interior. Cooler back to the northwest, weak trough there, of course, with the clouds, isolated thunderstorms along that boundary, and then drying out again behind it, but cooler. And weak front here keeps chance of rain and fog and definitely cloudy skies for Kodiak Island and into Bristol Bay. Drizzle possible again along the Alaska Peninsula. And some of that moisture might slide on up into western Prince William Sound late in the day. Whatever it does will be quite light. Another sunny, warm day in store for the southeast coast, as well as the southeast interior areas with not much going on out over the Bering Sea. Kind of a general area of high pressure in through here. Not much of a gradient with it. Gradient back up to the northwest there, the much stronger storm off to the west of Wrangell Island. So that's where all the action will be. But we do have, again, this weak trough here kind of separating the warmer air with this thermal low from the cooler air out along the Arctic Ocean with somewhat higher pressure. And then out to the west here, a very weak trough sliding northeastward. That might bring a little bit of moisture, definitely lower flying conditions into the western central Aleutian areas. But really with light winds, high pressure, and warm air aloft, looking for considerable low clouds, fog, IFR from the Bering Strait all the way down to the Aleutians and northeastward along the Alaska Peninsula. And then for lows for tonight, 55 to 60 here over the central western interior, mid-50s all the way down to Bethel, with mid-50s for the Panhandle, 45 to 50 or so for the Copper River Basin, mid-upper 50s south central Alaska. Quite mild Tanana Valley and the upper Yukon, as well as the North Slope, lows in the mid-50s. Highs tomorrow, lower 70s for portions of the North Slope, possibly all the way out to, say, New Wixit, with lower to mid-80s here, possibly upper 80s, again over 40-mile country in the afternoon with record highs possibly being set, 75 to 82, Susitna Valley, but cooling into the mid-50s down toward Kodiak Island with more cloud cover, 70s to lower, maybe mid-80s over the Panhandle. Highs, or lows for the Monday morning, 55 to 60 again, northeast interior back out to the southwest, near 60 in the Susitna Valley, call it 50s to near 60, south central Alaska, about the same Copper River Basin as tomorrow morning, and mid to upper 50s for the southeast coast. Highs once again here on, let's see, Monday afternoon, lower to mid 50s along the Arctic coast, and then mid 60s to possibly 70 over the eastern North Slope, of course 70 where the sunnier locations, and upper 80s here for the eastern interior, possibly even including Northway, Tok, and Delta Junction, with cooling back to near 80 toward Tanana, maybe mid 70s, much cooler out to the west there along the coast, and south central Alaska. Again, more clouds, that weakening system coming in, so temperatures struggling to reach 70 in the Susitna Valley.
And now, aviation weather around Alaska.
Moving on to flying weather. Not a lot of change to what we've been seeing, with lots of IFR here from over the Bering Sea, all of the Aleutians, southern Alaska Peninsula up to Kodiak Island, into Kamishak Bay there across the Barrens, southern Cook Inlet, narrow band along the North Gulf Coast and the northern Gulf of Alaska, on down the southeast coast. And for tomorrow afternoon, some scattered thunderstorms developing here over the north central interior and on off to the northeast there along the Brooks Range. Otherwise, VFR, southeast coast, marginal right along the coast. And also that condition persists throughout the day in Prince William Sound. IFR holds over the Kamishak Bay area, east side of Kodiak, and the southern Alaska Peninsula. Marginal VFR here on the west coast all the way up to about Point Barrow. VFR on the east side there, and a little bit less IFR out over the Bering Sea, but that's the only way it could have changed. Couldn't have possibly been any more. And the outlook for Monday morning, a little bit more, back on an increase here. For much of the Bering Sea, all the Aleutians forecast IFR, again, along and south of the Alaska Peninsula, a little bit more in and around Kodiak Island, and some sliding northward now into the Alaska Range, southern Alaska Range, there from the Kamishak Bay area, marginal VFR all the way up to the central Alaska Range, mostly on the southern and eastern slopes. Otherwise, VFR Cook Inlet in the valley, VFR over the interior, all the way up to the eastern Beaufort Sea coast. And for the afternoon on Monday, IFR mostly along and off the Arctic coast there, with marginal VFR inland a short ways there on the central coast, but lots of IFR here for the Bering Sea. Maybe a little bit of a breakout here toward the central Aleutians, but still Adak and Atka forecasting IFR the entire day. A little improvement for Kodiak, maybe to marginal, and IFR here holds on the southern eastern slopes of the western Alaska Range. Just south of the Kenai Peninsula, marginal VFR slowly decreasing over Prince William Sound, and marginal along the Panhandle. For passes, Anatuvik, VFR, risk of a thunderstorm, same forecast for Adigan. And for Lake Clark and Merrill, looks pretty good. VFR, definitely VFR. It will be VFR for Lake Clark, Merrill, and Rainy tomorrow. Windy, VFR as well. Isabel, Mentasta, both VFR. Tanita, also VFR. And Portage, though, marginal VFR, start to finish. And for Chilcoot and White, VFR. Freezing levels, again, not a lot of variation. Pretty warm, 10 to 12,000 feet across mainland Alaska. The good upper level ridge here kind of centered, give or take, around Yakutats. That signifies warm air aloft with a little thermal gradient across much of the forecast area. A little bit of an increase out here, but 10 to 14,000 feet. So really not that cool, but a little bit more of a thermal gradient out here over the western Aleutians and Bering. And for icing, some moisture sliding eastward here. But with the warm air mass, that's going to be above 12,000 feet out here along and north of the Aleutians, above 10,000 feet. One batch here over Bristol Bay to Kodiak Island. This next batch down to the south, that'll be moving on up on Sunday night, up toward Kodiak there. And up to the north, areas of possible light to very isolated moderate rime icing there, above about 8,000 feet, Brooks Range. And then this band out here, that'll be dropping down into the Arctic coast again on Sunday night. And for the jet stream here, again, big ridge, upper level ridge, 18,000 feet here over the, well, centered roughly here on the eastern North Gulf Coast, but really dominating much of interior Alaska, as well as the Panhandle trough out here to the west. And 33,000 foot wind speeds here, 70 to 90 knots coming around the southwest and southern portion of this trough. Back around, only 50 knots in across the southwest interior, but that'll be supporting those stronger surface winds. And looking at 9,000 feet southeast flow here, ridge kind of shifting off at this level to the east, 25 to 35 knots, westerlies up to 35 over the western central Aleutians, 3,000 feet, light winds over the Panhandle. Southeast, 15 to as high as 25 to 30 knots there along the southwest coast. Lighter over the Alaska Peninsula. Westerlies here for the Aleutians, 25 to 30. And also pretty brisk up along the Arctic coast. And taking a look at turbulence, we've got moderate chop, occasional moderate chop here, Kuskokwim Bay, on down along Bristol Bay, Kodiak Island, and up here along the western Arctic coast. Otherwise, could be a little bit choppy there, but nothing too serious for the western Aleutians and Bering Strait. And after the break, I'll be back to look at the marine forecast and other interesting information.
Just as the sun is part of weather on Earth, it also affects weather in space. The sun creates solar wind by steadily releasing a flow of plasma particles in all directions around it. Sometimes the sun gives off a flash of light and X-rays. This is known as a solar flare. When massive bursts of particles explode into space, we call it a coronal mass ejection, or CME. When a CME is directed toward Earth, it hits the magnetosphere, the magnetic field around our planet that protects us. If the storm is large, we may even get to enjoy a light display in the sky called the auroras. In space, satellites may be damaged, and astronauts should take cover. On Earth, people do not feel any physical effects. We may lose electricity in some areas, polar flights may be rerouted, and satellite services may be disrupted. While these situations aren't ideal, they are rare and fixable. This is why we will continue to study the sun and its interactions with Earth and the solar system.
Longing for more space, open skies, and exotic travel? Then look up, about 30 to 600 miles straight up, at the ionosphere, Earth's interface to space. Nestled far above the clouds but below outer space, this little understood destination invites you to explore its many features. Experience both the weather from Earth and the weather from space. Marvel at the ballet of radio waves and navigation signals, like GPS, leaping through this particle paradise. Sit back, relax, and take in the aurora, some satellites, and the International Space Station as they sail by. And you'll want your camera handy for one of the region's signature features, bright and colorful air glow. This daily show is made possible by the ionosphere's own swirling charged particles, because that's what the ionosphere is. It's all charged particles. During the day, enjoy the sea of particles, freshly energized by the sun. As the sun sets, this particle party relaxes and the air glow thins. Our quieter nightlife lets you gaze into clearer skies. The ionosphere is in constant motion, an amazing effect of space weather. Don't miss when solar storms rain down. The storm separates the particles even more, making this colorful region delightfully more dense in some places and stunningly sparse in others. And don't forget about storms from Earth below. Your weather from back home also stirs up this one-of-a-kind destination. Experience the unique beauty of every season, as changes in Earth's atmosphere, daily and annually, can create pressure waves, changing the ionosphere's shape and density. Venture to the equator, where our particles are packed in lush and thick. Cruise along a magnetic field line and see how the ionosphere's charged material also interacts with Earth's own magnetic field. Don't miss the superhighway of particles zipping out to space and back down to the planet. This unpredictable parade of charged particles can help you unplug and unwind. This is because the crowd of particles can garble the radio and satellite communications from home. The ionosphere welcomes you to discover more about this little-known region. After all, once you've explored this interface to space, who knows how much farther you'll be able to go.
When a star, bigger and more massive than the Sun, runs out of fuel at the end of its life, its core collapses while the outer layers are blown off in a supernova explosion. What's left behind depends on the star's original mass. A star roughly 10 to 20 times our Sun leaves behind a neutron star. A more massive star becomes a black hole. Unlike black holes, neutron stars are directly observable, usually as pulsars, the lighthouses of the cosmos. Discovered 50 years ago, they are the densest observable objects in the universe. Neutron stars compress up to twice the Sun's mass into a city-sized sphere. Matter is packed so tightly that a teaspoon of neutron star interior would weigh more than 1 billion tons on Earth. Still, the nature of the ultra-dense matter in the cores of neutron stars is unknown. Because neutron stars pack so much mass into such a tiny volume, they produce gravity strong enough to bend the light they emit, distorting their appearance in a way that enables the mass and size of the star to be measured. Scientists cannot reproduce the extreme conditions in and around neutron stars on Earth. They must look into the galaxy to answer decades-old questions about extreme matter and gravity. NASA's Neutron Star Interior Composition Explorer mission, or NISA, will make X-ray observations of neutron stars from its perch on the International Space Station. It will give astronomers more insight into these mysterious objects, helping determine what is under their surface. A multi-purpose mission, NISA includes a technology demonstration called Sextant. It will analyze NISA's observations to validate the use of rapidly rotating neutron stars as navigation beacons for travel in deep space throughout the solar system and beyond.
And now, marine weather around Alaska.
Welcome back. Looking at today's sea ice analysis. Not a lot of change from yesterday. You can see here this area from Point Barrow to Point Franklin has lifted off the coast, actually a fair distance off the coast. And for the next several days, that pattern will probably continue there, as well as along the east side here. And the ice edge through here, Chukchi, that'll continue to advance slowly north-northwest, but not any great distance. So for the coastal water forecast, along the southeast coast, all out of the northwest, 15 knots on the north coast, 20 knots, 6-foot seas south coast, and Stevens Passage, Clarence Strait, light northwesterlies at 10, south at 10 for Lynn Canal, Glacier Bay. And for Monday, go 15 knots there for Lynn Canal with northwest winds, picking up a little bit, 15 knots also for Stevens Passage and Clarence Strait, seas there about 3 feet. South coast, not much change, northwest 20, bring the seas down a foot at 5 feet, and lighter winds and seas a little less up on the north coast, 10 to 15 out of the northwest. And for Prince William Sound, light west winds tomorrow, or variable to west, 10 knots, seas 2 feet or less, 15 knots here for the eastern North Gulf Coast. Back to the west, that comes down to 10 knots. Then swings around to the east, 20 knots for the Barren Islands. Same thing for Kamishak Bay with that weakening front gradually beginning to affect these areas. Light variable winds for Cook Inlet. And then for Monday, we'll go northeast, 15 knots for northern Cook Inlet, south of the Forelands, 20 knots. Small craft advisories, Kamishak Bay, northeast 25, 9-foot seas, east 25 here for the Barren Islands, and western North Gulf Coast, seas running about 6 feet, and east 20, there around Middleton Island in that marine zone with 6-foot seas, and wind staying variable to east for Prince William Sound, light with slight seas. Kodiak Island, southeast 20 on the east side, Chillicothe Strait, small craft advisories there for those 25-knot east winds, southeast 20, Sitkinak to Castle Cape, and the Alaska Peninsula east southeast at about 15, not too bad, 3 to 6-foot seas. Bristol Bay east at 20 with seas at 4 feet. Outlook for Monday, northeast 20 for Bristol Bay. Light southeasterlies for the peninsula at 10 knots, and small craft advisories here for Kodiak Island, as well as Chillicothe Strait, northeast 25, southeast 25 for the east side of Kodiak. And for the Fox Islands tomorrow, west-northwest, 10 to 15 knots, 3 to 6-foot seas, of course highest on the Pacific side. Central Aleutians, west-southwest of 15. A little breezier out west there from areas, well, actually west of Adak all the way to Shemya, southwest at 20. And that'll hold pretty much through Monday. We'll go southwest 20, now west of, say, Kiska Island. Amchitka, north winds at 15, over to about Adak, become northwest at 15. And that pattern pretty uniform all the way over to Unalaska Island. And for the southwest coast, tomorrow, southeast winds 15 to 20, increasing to these values in the afternoon, or probably all day long actually. And for the area, or back behind that weak frontal boundary, northwest of 10, Pribilof, St. Matthew Island, southeast 15, St. Lawrence Island, and Norton Sound on Monday, east at 10. Same thing for St. Lawrence Island, north to northeast 15 along the southwest coast, northwest light 10 knots, St. Matthew Island, the Pribilofs. And eastern Beaufort Sea coast, 15-knot winds, south-southwest, but brisk wind advisories for the central coast. Back to the west, 25 knots out of the southwest till you get to Cape Beaufort. From there south, it's 20 knots from the south. And then for Monday, south 10 to 15, so dropping off a little bit, southwest 15, lighter winds on the west side for Monday as well, light winds for the central eastern Arctic coast out of the south-southwest. And looking at tonight's weather again, mild here. Again, temperatures 50s to maybe lower 60s for the overnight lows. Definitely dry winds, light, pick some clouds up here, and a chance of showers over the western Brooks Range, and low clouds, fog, maybe drizzle, maybe light rain, western Arctic coast. This weakening front slides that narrow band of light moisture northeastward. They're possibly reaching Kodiak toward morning. It stays really low on the flying conditions. Lots of IFR, the Bering Sea with drizzle and fog, including the Aleutians. Southeast coast, clouds, low clouds, fog, maybe some drizzle right along the coastline. Same thing for the North Gulf Coast. Clouds rolling back into Prince William Sound. Trying to burn off tomorrow, but definitely possible record highs here over the eastern interior. Isolated thunderstorms and cooler to the northwest. Sunny and warm again, 70s and 80s for the Panhandle. No change for the Bering Sea. And that also holds into Monday. Lots of IFR out there. Rain and clouds begin to cool off the Kenai Peninsula, Cook Inlet, and even south central Alaska.
These forecasts are for planning purposes only. Call 1-800-WX-BRIEF for a formal pre-flight briefing. Always file a flight plan before you go flying. The U.S. Coast Guard Auxiliary urges you to leave a float plan with a friend or the harbor master before you go boating.